Saturday, 24th of January, 2026. What a week that was. We're going to talk about Ukraine, NATO, Greenland, and the collapse of moral authority. Imagine you are a landlord. A landlord is a person who owns property and rents it to others. One day, your neighbor breaks into another neighbor's apartment and says, "This place is mine now. I'm stronger. I deserve it." You are furious. You call the police. You tell everyone, "This is immoral. This is illegal. This violates the rules." And then 2 weeks later, you turn around and say, "Actually, I've been thinking. That apartment across the street is very strategic. It has good sunlight, good access, valuable space. Maybe I should take it too." At that moment, something very important happens. You lose moral credibility. Moral credibility is the trust people have in your ethical values and consistency. And that is exactly the split screen the world is watching right now. A split screen is two scenes shown side by side at the same time. On one side, you have the United States condemning Russia for invading Ukraine. On the other side, the United States openly discusses controlling Greenland. So this episode is about what happens when a superpower starts talking out of both sides of its mouth. To talk out of both sides of your mouth is an idiom. It means to say contradictory things, to be inconsistent. This is Listen. Please share and subscribe. So the first part, NATO, Afghanistan. Let's begin with NATO. NATO is a military alliance of North American and European countries, NATO. Donald Trump suggested that NATO allies were not really there for the United States, that they stayed back in Afghanistan. To stay back is to not go forward into danger, to remain behind in safety. Front lines, when we talk about front lines, we mean the most dangerous area of fighting. And this is why that comment caused outrage. At the peak of the Afghanistan war, there were about 130,000 troops from more than 50 NATO and partner countries. Troops are just soldiers. Thousands of those soldiers died. British families lost sons and daughters. Canadian families lost sons and daughters. Danish families lost sons and daughters. So when someone casually says, "Well, they didn't really fight that much," that doesn't just sound wrong. It rubs salt in the wound. When we say to rub salt in the wound, that's an idiom. It means to make emotional pain even worse. Here's a key phrase you need in professional English: historical amnesia. Historical amnesia is forgetting important events from the past. Alliances depend on memory, and when leaders forget sacrifices, alliances start to fray. To fray means to slowly break apart. Then we have collective defense and broken trust. NATO is built on one sacred promise, one promise that can't be broken: collective defense. This means if one member is attacked, others defend it. That promise is written into Article 5 of the NATO treaty. And here's a fact most people don't know. Article 5 has only been activated once in history, after 9/11. That means European soldiers died in Afghanistan because the US was attacked. So when someone questions whether NATO would show up for America, they are not just insulting allies, they are rewriting history. And that destroys what we call trust capital. Trust capital is stored goodwill and confidence built over time. Trust capital. And diplomacy without trust capital is like lending money to someone who never repays. Now let's move to Ukraine. There are new trilateral talks planned between the US, Russia, and Ukraine. Trilateral just means involving three sides, in this case the US, Russia, and Ukraine. Most analysts, most experienced analysts, say we should approach this with maximum skepticism. Skepticism is just another word for doubt. Why? Because Russia's public demands haven't changed. They still demand Ukrainian withdrawal from Donbas, formal land concessions, and permanent neutrality for Ukraine. To withdraw is to pull back, leave an area. So they want Ukraine to withdraw from Donbas, to pull back, to leave it. A concession is something you give up in a negotiation. They want formal land concessions. This leads to one of the most important idioms in diplomacy today, going through the motions. When we say someone is going through the motions, this means they are doing something without any real intention to succeed. Many peace talks exist mainly for appearances. They are what we call performative diplomacy. Performative means done to create an image, not real results. And here's another brutal truth. Putin has very little incentive to compromise. Incentive is another word for motivation, a reason to act. He's not losing enough to feel pressure. This week, one analyst described these negotiations as a kabuki dance. A kabuki dance is a traditional form of Japanese theater. It's a metaphor for a ritualized performance, meaning everyone is pretending that something meaningful is happening, trilateral talks, etc., etc., but nothing meaningful is happening. There's a useful idiom here, to kick the can down the road. To kick the can down the road literally means to delay solving a problem, to leave it for the future. A weak ceasefire that freezes the conflict, but solves nothing, is just kicking the can down the road. Then we have territorial integrity, the rule book everyone pretends to follow. So you open the world's legal rule book, and one of the most important phrases in modern international law, territorial integrity. That's the principle that borders must not be violated. It comes from the UN Charter. It means you cannot invade your neighbor just because you are stronger. This protects sovereign states. Sovereign just means independent, self-governing. And this is why Ukraine matters so much. Because if borders become optional, then every weak country becomes a target. Now let's talk about Greenland and what happened this week. First, why does Greenland matter? Because it's strategically located in the Arctic. It's rich in rare earth minerals. Strategic means important for long-term advantage. It's important for missile detection, and it's important for submarine routes. But here's the dirty secret. The US already has extensive defense rights in Greenland. Through a 1951 treaty with Denmark, the US can build bases, expand radar, station troops, base troops in Greenland, which means there is what we call an off-ramp. An off-ramp is a peaceful exit route from escalation. You don't need to threaten sovereignty. So when leaders talk about taking Greenland, they sound like 19th century imperialists. And that triggers this old phrase, might makes right. That's a saying. Might makes right means power decides what is right, not law. And when you use that logic, you lose moral standing. So there's a great hypocrisy here. Ukraine versus Greenland. This is the heart of this episode. The US says Russia violated Ukraine's territorial integrity. Then hints, but maybe we can violate Greenland's sovereignty. And that creates what's called cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is discomfort from holding contradictory beliefs, and it destroys moral authority, ethical credibility to judge others, moral authority. And this contradiction was not lost on the rest of the world. When we say not lost on, we mean clearly noticed. This contradiction was not lost on the rest of the world. Then we have Canada, and things get even stranger. Tensions this week with Canada reached historic levels. One US politician said, "Why treat friends with brass knuckles and enemies with velvet gloves?" Brass knuckles is a metaphor for harsh treatment, like using a weapon. And velvet gloves are soft fabric. This is a metaphor for gentle treatment. Why treat friends with brass knuckles and enemies with velvet gloves? That line is self-explanatory. It's devastating because Canada has been America's closest ally for over a century. And now Canadians are quietly asking, can we still rely on the US? That question alone shows alliance collapse. Now we return to everyday life, tariffs, cost of living, and political suicide. Tariffs are taxes on imports. Threatening tariffs while people struggle with rent and food and energy and healthcare. This is called being tone deaf. Tone deaf means socially unaware. There's another idiom here, to lose the plot. To lose the plot means to stop acting logically. When leaders talk more about Greenland than groceries, voters think they lost the plot. Now the 2026 midterms are coming, and analysts say Trump looks undisciplined. Discipline is self-control, focus. His speeches ramble. To ramble is to talk without structure. He seems distracted by symbolic power plays instead of economic plans, and that weakens his party. So the final lesson from this, the final verdict, credibility is not built with words. It's built with consistency, restraint, and respect for rules. When a superpower breaks those principles, the entire world order becomes unstable. And when borders become negotiable, war becomes profitable again. Some of the phrasal verbs from this episode: to walk through something is to explain step by step. Let's walk through the NATO facts, for instance. To stay back is to avoid danger. They accused allies of staying back this week. To go through the motions, that's to fake effort. The peace talks are going through the motion. To kick off is to begin. The talks kick off tomorrow. To back down is to retreat from a position. He later backed down, for instance. To pick a fight is to start conflict unnecessarily. You could say that picking a fight with Canada backfired. And to lose the plot is to act irrationally. Critics are saying that certain people have lost the plot. Some of the idioms and sayings we used: to rub salt in the wound. This is to make pain worse. Might makes right. That means power replaces law. Kick the can down the road. Delay solving something. Leave it for the future. Brass knuckles and velvet gloves. This is harsh versus gentle. And to talk out of both sides of your mouth is to contradict yourself. So the key vocabulary from this episode: moral credibility. Moral credibility is the trust people have in a country or a leader or a person to act according to ethical values and principles, not just self-interest. For example, when a country condemns invasions but talks about taking another territory itself, it loses moral credibility. Territorial integrity. This is the principle that a country's borders should not be violated, and that no other country has the right to take its land by force. Russia's invasion of Ukraine is widely seen as a violation of Ukraine's territorial integrity. Sovereign. A sovereign country is just an independent nation that governs itself and is not controlled by another state. Ukraine is a sovereign country and has the legal right to control its own territory. A concession is something you give up or accept in a negotiation in order to reach an agreement. Giving up territory would be a major concession for Ukraine in any peace deal. Off-ramp. An off-ramp is a peaceful or diplomatic way to exit a dangerous conflict or a tense situation without escalating it further. The existing treaty with Denmark provides an off-ramp that avoids threatening Greenland's sovereignty. An incentive is a reason or motivation for someone to do something or change their behavior. Putin has little incentive to negotiate seriously because he believes time is on his side. Tone deaf. This means socially or politically unaware, saying or doing something that ignores what people are really worried about. For example, talking about Greenland while people struggle with high food prices looks tone deaf to many voters. And cognitive dissonance. This is the mental discomfort people feel when they hold two contradictory beliefs or see actions that conflict with stated values. As an example, you could say there is cognitive dissonance when a country condemns invasions but hints it may take territory itself. Moral authority. This is the ethical credibility that gives someone the right to criticize or judge others' actions. For example, a country loses moral authority when it breaks the same rules it demands others follow. Strategic, that just means important for long-term advantage, especially in military or political or economic terms. Greenland is considered strategic because of its location in the Arctic and its military value. Discipline, self-control, focus, and the ability to stay consistent instead of acting impulsively or emotionally. As an example, political leaders need discipline to stay focused on economic issues instead of chasing distractions. And to ramble, that means to talk for a long time in a confused or unfocused way without a clear structure. Voters lose confidence when leaders ramble instead of clearly explaining their policies, for instance. And that's everything for this episode. Thank you for listening. This is Listen. Please share, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next episode. Until then, bye-bye for now.